Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Info Tap. I'm glad you made it. I could not pass up this headline. There's so many different factors involved with COLA, and I will tell you, and I've said it before in these videos, that the Senior Citizens League has actually talked about there has to be a better way to calculate COLA, cost of living adjustment, due to the fact that senior spending habits are different than those that calculate inflation. They are not line by line. They aren't exact. So even if there is a COLA, cost of living adjustment, upward for whatever year, it may not equate to the exact cost difference that the senior citizens are feeling out of pocket. So with that, my thought had always been, well, what if seniors and veterans work together in order to figure out a new way to calculate COLA, and what would that look like? And lo and behold, here's an article. The headline is Social Security. Here's what your estimated COLA would be in 2024 if better method was used to calculate increase. Interesting, right? So hit the thumbs up, subscribe, share with a friend, all that good stuff. I really appreciate it. It helps to push this information out there to the masses, and everybody's hands in it help make it light work. So, jumping into the article here. In August, 71,276,000, that's a big number. 71,276,000 Americans receive Social Security, Supplemental Security Income, or both, according to the Social Security Administration. For those recipients, the annual cost of living adjustment can make a huge difference for those struggling to make ends meet. Now, let's insert veterans with VA compensation, right? So, not just Social Security recipients, but insert veterans as well. So, let's move on. When the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics releases September's inflation report on October 12th, which is around the corner, and oh, by the way, remember that we have July, August, and September are the months that are used to calculate COLA. So those are the CPI numbers that are used and averaged down. And so the September's numbers will be released October 12th, and pretty much almost instantaneously, or within a day or so, we should have our COLA figure, which will be up. So moving on, the Social Security Administration will have the final piece of the puzzle required to determine 2024's COLA, and eager seniors and insert veterans will be able to figure out how much they will receive every month. Estimates have wavered along with inflation rates this year. While inflation has dropped steadily since the historic highs of last year, annual rates have risen for the past 2 months. Procrastinators, however, have next year's COLA projected at 3 or 3.2%, which are the last numbers that I had read out. A 3% is kind of where we were hovering, and then when August's numbers were released, then we were looking at a 3.2. But this is well below the 2023 significant increase of 8.7%. With a cost of living adjustment, or COLA, of 3%, the average monthly Social Security check for a retired worker would raise by about $55 to $18.92 in January from $18.37, so up $55 this year, according to the Wall Street Journal. According to Money, 2 proposed pieces of legislation have been introduced by Democratic congresspersons to bolster the purchasing power of seniors, which was dwindled amid higher prices and interest rates. Okay, there's our nugget. That's a nugget, right? I'm going to read that again. According to Money, which is probably money.com, 2 proposed pieces of legislation have been introduced by Democratic congresspersons, don't know who they are, to bolster the purchasing power of seniors, which has dwindled amid higher prices and interest rates. So I have some homework to do, right? I will search and find that, hopefully. And again, where it says seniors, which many of you out there are seniors, but let's also insert veterans, right? So important. COLA, cost of living adjustment, is typically measured by analyzing the Consumer Price Index, CPIW, the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, month to month. The 2 new acts, the 2023 Fair COLA for Seniors Act and the Social Security Expansion Act. So there's my next videos, right? Those are gonna, I'm gonna look into those for you, and are proposing using the CPIE, the Consumer Price Index for Americans 62 years of age and older. Well, no kidding. Don't you think that would make sense for Social Security recipients, considering the majority of them are seniors, as its base? The CPIE is tracked by the BLS, but not used widely due to its perceived limitations, namely because it measures price changes on items specifically used by the elderly, like prescription medication. Oh, by the way, elderly, let's insert veteran, right? Like prescription medication. Go figure. However, when calculating COLA for Social Security, it makes perfect sense to use this neglected index. Claim the bill's sponsors and advocates. Using COLA that actually reflects how retirees spend their money, especially in healthcare, is a no-brainer that will increase benefits and make Social Security work better for the people it serves. Representative John Garamendi, who introduced the Fair COLA for Seniors Act in February, economists argue that the CPIE isn't the Social Security savior that seniors think it is, because it lacks accuracy and tracks lesser quality survey data due to using a smaller sample size than the CPIW does. It is a worse measurement than the CPIW because it doesn't account for year-to-year changes in spending patterns, said Mark Goldwyn, Senior VP and Policy Director for the Nonprofit Committee for Responsible Federal Budget. I guarantee you nobody would be advocating for the CPIE, not a single person. The CPIE was going slower than the generalized inflation on an ongoing basis, but that's exactly what it's done the last 2 years, Goldwyn says. So here's my little insert. We don't have to use the CPIE, right? If the idea is that they're trying to make it higher, then how about fine? Then still use the same CPIW plus X, right? So CPI plus X. Maybe it's CPI plus 1.5%, CPI plus 2%, right? Whatever it is. And just do exactly like it is plus X, whatever they're trying to get to. That would make sense. So the bottom line here is that there are efforts to correct the smaller COLA because there's an obvious split, I don't know how to draw it, between the actual cost of living and the cost of living increase, right? The cost of living's going up, your increase is not going up as dramatically. So those lines, right, however you draw it, I don't have a chart, however you draw it, are getting further and further apart as every year goes by. So let's correct it. Let's do the CPIW plus X. All right, moving on. Additionally, CPIE doesn't take into account situational bias, switching from more expensive products to cheaper ones as prices change. True housing costs and discounts that seniors rely so heavily upon. Furthermore, as Goldman notes, although adopting the CPIE to calculate COLA would potentially amount to an increase of 0.2% a year, The forthcoming Social Security insolvency issue will likely negate any positives using the index would bring. It might even quicken the insolvency of the old age and survivors insurance and disability insurance trust funds. Social Security recipients would have reaped the benefits of an 8% increase if the SSA, Social Security Administration, used CPIE to determine COLA last October rather than the 8.7% they are enjoying now, claims Goldwyn. That concludes it. But now my question, because that concludes the article, but now my question is, okay, fine. If CPIE would have resulted in an 8% instead of an 8.7%, well, what was it the year before, and what would it be today, right? Would we be looking at a 5% today? I don't know. Because I would take a lower than 8.7 in order to have an average overall higher, right? That makes sense. So anyway, I'm going to look into those other pieces of legislation that are out and share that with you as well. But interesting that there is some movement out there from some legislators to try and correct the significant shortcomings of the COLA calculations. So with that, thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you. Have a great one. And remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong.